Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our next webinar in the Public Safety Innovation webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Chris Borland, the Customer Outreach Manager at Envisage Technology, and I'm your host for today. Just a couple housekeeping notes before I introduce our speakers. First, our topic today will run about an hour with approximately 40 minutes of presentation and 20 minutes of our speakers to take your questions. Please feel free to enter your questions at any time into the chat box in the lower left corner of your screen. Also, we are recording the webinar today, so you will be able to share it with others after the webinar. We'll be following up after the meeting with details about how you can get at that video. Okay, so let's get started. Envisage Technologies creates new technology solutions for public safety professionals. We started this webinar series because we are passionate about spreading good ideas for public safety. We fundamentally believe that readiness saves lives, and we are committed to improving public safety through innovation. Today's webinar is no exception. Our speakers are dedicated to solving challenges within corrections using education-based approaches. The Tennessee Corrections Institute created the County Corrections Partnership to help address jail issues and reforms, as well as allow key individuals and teams within corrections to make informed decisions regarding their correctional facilities. We are fortunate to have with us today William Wall, Deputy Director of Tennessee Corrections Institute, and Bob Bass, County Corrections Partnership Coordinator. As Deputy Director of TCI, Will manages the day-to-day duties and missions for the Institute, which is tasked with inspection and providing technical assistance to over 130 local adult correctional facilities, including the training correctional officers within the state of Tennessee. Will has devoted almost 20 years to the field of corrections for adults as well as juveniles in both the private and public sector, and has developed training programs and curriculum for nearly 15 years while reimagining and implementing the method in which local correctional facilities within Tennessee submit and report educational curriculum. Bob began working for Tennessee Corrections Institute in 1998. He has been instrumental in assisting local governments with the process of building new facilities and educating the stakeholders on the local aspects of maintaining a constitutional jail environment. As the coordinator for the County Corrections Partnership, he is presently working with 31 counties in the state of Tennessee to assist them in improving their correctional environments. Will and Bob bring with them a wealth of knowledge and experience in improving the correctional environment in Tennessee, bringing new ways of thinking to solve difficult challenges. We are excited to have them share with us today, so I'm going to turn it over the presentation to them.
Good afternoon. Just wanted to get started off today. Our presentation's on the County Corrections Partnership. This is just a portion of what Tennessee Corrections Institute is tasked with, but it has become at the top of our list as far as goals that we have reached and that we are continuing to implement throughout the state of Tennessee. This isn't a pitch for any program that persons should buy or any program which we would come across the country or go across the country and implement this program. What we wanted to do this for was to show that in each municipality, each state, each county across the country, that you can implement something along these lines and provide some cost-saving measures to yourself and really get in depth in what your correctional problems are or ways to solve these things, and to get the people who matter the most, the stakeholders, the different people within your community, to buy into corrections and understand what the jail is about, what your local facilities are about, what the general sentiment of the public is, and it's completely educational based. But before we get a little too far into that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Bob and allow him to give some historical perspective on Tennessee Corrections Institute.
Thank you, Will, and good afternoon, everyone. Tennessee Corrections Institute has been around since 1974. Originally, we were started to help the correction officers inside the facilities. There was no governing body. There was no one doing their training other than Tennessee Department of Corrections. There were a host of lawsuits across the state, so our legislative body recognized the need and asked Tennessee Corrections Institute to be formed. It took about a year and a half a blue ribbon panel put together, and then at that time, Dr. Doug Morgan, who came out of the University of Tennessee to help coordinate that, became the director. We actually started, and the reason it is called Institute, just training officers. And then a little way down the road, here come the lawsuits against the jail. So our duties were expanded long about 1980, 81 to actually set that up where we would do jail inspections and present certification, not accreditation, but certification. TCI is about compliance. We are not a regulatory organization, and I like that dynamic. It lets us work with all of the local officials to address their correctional needs and any shortcomings they have. So standards came a little bit later. The original standards were set up by ACA, and then what we thought was relevant to the state of Tennessee. There were some cases that drove that. Along about 1974, there was a very tragic happening in one of our counties. A lot of people lost their life in a fire. So we developed it based on that. Later, and I mean just recently, as of 2015, we adopted ACA core standards, adult detention local facility lockup. So we're very proud of that. We want uniformity, continuity, and so we were able to get that done in relatively a short period of time. So everyone is looking, and if they are an ACA certified facility, that's what we're dealing with across the state in these jails, these 130-odd facilities. We inspect them manually. It is unannounced. If they can meet the standards, then certification is recommended. If they can't, they have 60 days to file a plan of action. So that's how our governing body is set up. The inspectors are referred to as detention facility specialists that actually do that, file a report, and it goes in front of a board of control. So our board of control have people that are appointed by the governor, and of course, ex-officials like the Department of Corrections, director sits on that, sheriffs, people from law professors from different universities. So that is the governing body that gives a yay or nay when we recommend certification. And of course, we're also tasked with training. These are things that we are mandated to do, and I'm going to let Will talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, as of 2015, we were responsible for the training or monitoring of training for over 10,000 individuals across the state. We provided approximately 197 classes last year, but we also monitor agencies that have their own academies, and we go in, and what it does is it creates continuity. We supply these training waiver agencies along with what we deliver in current correctional, I guess you could say, hot topics that are either on the top of the list of problems within correctional environments or things that you need to assist within those correctional environments. And we try to keep that training on the cusp of innovative or different manners in which you can perform your job in what's legal-based training. Also, we provide technical assistance as well. Last year we had over 6,500 instances of technical assistance. That's either site visits or legal research or researching different items for jails just to understand their policies, their procedures, their operations. We had over 40,000 contacts, which means there's over 40,000 times either someone reached out to us or we reached out to them to provide them assistance in different instances, whether it be in front of a group or whether it be us doing a site visiting and visiting with the mayor, the sheriff, so forth and so on. But that's just a little bit about what TCI is all about. And what we're going to get into now is the County Corrections Partnership, which I'll let Bob talk to you a little bit about how that was developed, which was ultimately the brainchild of our director, Beth Ash, our current director.
As Will mentioned, Beth Ash, our director, about 5 years ago, kind of put this together. And basically the vision is just to better the correctional environment in every county, and especially lend some help to those people that might be struggling with that or be in trouble. And of course, our target population are going to be those that actually were not certified. At that time, there were 12. We have 10 presently in the state of Tennessee that have are not certified. So those are the ones we started working with. My background as a jail administrator, working with construction and working with agencies once upon a time that came up out of the ground. Back in those days, it was kind of the DFS, the jail inspector, would go into the county, and sheriff would say, hey, I need some help. Come talk to my county commission, explain to them that we've got problems at the jail. And all of us that have been through that process knows that what eventually happens is, well, the sheriff ends up taking ownership for that. He gets blamed for it. That he says, look, I just want a new jail. I don't like what I have. So I had a lot of experience with that through West Tennessee. One particular time we had, I think, 9 facilities that were coming out of the ground at once. We actually had jails that were operating back then. Some of them, one was actually 100 years old, the physical plant was. And so the majority of them were at least 50 years plus, and I'm counting years, not the 3.5 that we actually attribute to the operation of a jail. I'm talking those physical days. So we had some old buildings and some things need to be replaced. That was tough. It ended up being a conversation with just the inspector in front of the county commission. What we use here is the purse string holders or the governing body in our counties in Tennessee. There are 95 of those. So she recognized a need where we could actually do this a different way. And it's kind of thinking outside of the box. Now, Will pointed out earlier, we don't know if this would work in other regions of the state, or country rather, but I think it absolutely would, depending on the makeup. I think at one time I was told by NIC there were 35, 37 agencies similar to states that had similar agencies like TCI that were working with people through compliance and certification. So I think there's a possibility it could work other places. That's why we're kind of bringing this to you today, because it has absolutely been a godsend. I had full reign to come up with a business model to use so we could better serve our customers, and so I sat down and began drawing up how this should work, who the stakeholders should be, and who should be invited to the table. And we do have a plan. So every time I go in, I have that model when I'm asked and we see a jail in trouble, be it overcrowding or just operational-wise, we have a chance to make it work. And it goes a long way toward their plan of action. You may hear me refer to that later in the talks as just a POA, and we always say CCP for short instead of spelling out the County Corrections Partnership. We wanted to take this path, and this pathway would be that we would do it on an educational-based platform. Instead of going to a county commission meeting and all the commissioners sitting in a room and all of a sudden there's some correctional expert saying this is what's wrong with your operation, this is what you need to do to fix it, I felt that it would be best if committees were formed, these partnerships, stakeholders brought in, and we begin an educational process so they can make those educated decisions. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that approach, and later in our program we'll talk about some of the success stories. By bringing those stakeholders in, letting them see it, and actually I like to call it kind of a discovery process where people look and go, you know, I understand now. I understand why our recidivism rate is so high. I understand why the physical plant is in trouble. And this just better sets them apart so that when they go to their own town hall meetings or the districts that they represent, they can explain to their constituents why they're having to spend taxpayer money. And, of course, in this economy, we all know what that means. It just simply means we're going to be raising taxes. We have one county, I think, in the whole state of Tennessee that's debt-free. So, in fact, they actually did an expansion not long ago and were able to pay for that. So we're always talking about a very unpopular subject. But by bringing people in, doing it from an educational-based way, we get to educate those that are what I call the naysayers, bring them into the room, and let them say, this is just why we need to do this. And another point that we cross this all the time is maybe they did do a new jail. Maybe they built a new facility 15 years ago, 10 years ago, or did an expansion. And you know what? Now it's not working. Well, what kind of thought went into that? Well, we know they didn't have the County Correction Partnership back then. We know we did not have the studies done. All the things that we need to accomplish what we want to accomplish wasn't there. So you end up going back in the room saying, you know, wish we had done this in the very beginning, because you want to do those outlays where they're, you know, your plan's a 20-year plan or a 30-year plan.
And necessity is the mother of all invention, and with our state, while I won't get into the haves and have-nots, but when you had large municipalities, they would pay for these costly studies or audits that would look at their entire jail operation and then offer somewhat of a summation of, okay, this is what you need to do. Well, the problem lied that we had more jails in areas that were impoverished that needed that same type of information, that needed an in-depth look at what their jail operations were, what was causing the overcrowding, were there methods to get rid of the overcrowding without having to break ground on a new jail. And what that evolved into was us bringing the stakeholders together, or TCI bringing the stakeholders together, so we could look at some of these resolutions and say, how can we, proactively affect jail change? And whether it be through reducing your recidivism rate through programs, or whether it be building a new jail. And I think what it did was allow us to bring some of these resources to the table without these huge expenditures from private companies coming in and saying, okay, this is what you need. But what it also did was take the onus off of the local facility, because, I guess everyone who flies in on a plane is an expert, is the best way I can describe it. Because when you self-report your problems, then the persons who are sitting across the other side of the table are going to go, well, yeah, that's absolutely what they want. But they don't believe it's an accurate representation of what's really going on. And what we were able to do was bring these different stakeholders and these different resources that we have from across the state, and not do it at the cost of the taxpayer, because the tax dollars are already paying for it. But just put in line those resources in which these people could come in and give you an accurate description of what's going on with your jail. In fact, I think one of the participants today is a member of our County Corrections Partnership. I'm not certain of that, but they must have the same name. But once we bring these stakeholders in the room and we educate them, and then we bring in the different entities across the state, it works. It absolutely works. Because the layman or the average county commissioner, they don't understand what a jail's there for. They think it's just to lock up the bad guy, and it's the town drunk that you put in that jail. And we go through explaining that dynamic and what the jail really means in a community. And at that point, they can go out and educate the public, or even the public is more than welcome to come into these meetings or come into these workshops and these sessions that we have to help the process become a little more palatable.
The stakeholders involve sheriffs, legislators, state officials, police chiefs, county municipal mayors, local government officials, and we're able to work through them. We all know, and you've heard, I'm sure, in this business about not building your way out of it and how important it is to have programs in your facility and being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. All the things that you've heard people say and quote, we're going to be able to get that from these stakeholders. Having judges, having other agencies, we rely heavily here. One of our stakeholders is CTASC. We use their jail consultant. He's very gracious to come and be a part of this, and he'll do studies for them. We'll mention that it doesn't cost them. It's their tax dollars actually at work. So, we actually get to do this in a committee atmosphere, and where I've seen some, and I'm not being critical of criminal justice committees, that they're used all across the country, but what I see, one marked difference is simply this. We actually get to do ours in a committee setting. We bring everybody to the table, and I mean literally, we sit at a table and roll our sleeves up. So at any given meeting I'm at, I may have a circuit judge on my left, a general session judge on my right. The committee chairman may actually be the district attorney. So being able to involve everybody in the process knows we're going to get a good package and a good decision made at the end, whether this jail needs to build a new facility, it needs to expand, or is it just because of programs? And I'll talk a little bit later about some of those success stories. I mean, we literally have been able to just go in and help them change operations, regain their certification. And when you're doing that in the state of Tennessee, we're implying that you're running a constitutionally correct jail. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Bob mentioned the partners, and this wouldn't be possible without our partners. Jim mentioned the County Technical Assistance Service, which plays a huge role in what we do through providing staff analysis, through providing different assessments, feasibility studies that allow us to put this hard data together and paint the picture of what your current jail environment's like. The Tennessee Sheriff's Association, they are a promoter of this. They actually allow us to come in and speak to not only the correction side, but also the law enforcement side, so we can keep them updated on standards. They actually have a part in the standards that we write. Our Municipal Technical Advisory Service. We also deal with municipal police lockups in some circumstances. The Association of Police Chiefs for the same reason. The Association of County Mayors, because these are some of the people that they're the purse string holders. They're the ones who dictate, okay, what are our budgets going to look like? And our County Services Association. So all of these partners that we have, we can bring them all together when needed, or use some at sometimes, use some at the other, when we need these certain partners to come in and give us a good look and perspective on maybe what's in their realm or their genre of what they need to deal with, whether it be financing, whether it be a request for qualifications or request for proposal. A lot of times it's County Technical Assistance Service that does these things, but when we talk about bringing in outside entities or paying for a study to be done, which a lot of these things are accomplished through those, but once again we're circumventing the cost factor in this, because when we look at building a new jail, it's going to cost enough. But when we were able to circumvent some of these costs on the front end, and let's say you didn't have to build a new facility, or you didn't have to expand that facility, you were able to control recidivism rates through different programs. At that point, even though your dollars may have been well spent, could they have been spent better elsewhere?
Association of County Mayors have really been a big support of this, and they actually have a venue. They have two meetings, one in the spring, one in the fall, and I've had that opportunity along with the CTAS representative to go and speak, and that's across the state of Tennessee, all 95 counties representatives. So that's a great venue and a great way to get the word out. So if there's something like that in your state where the County Mayors Association may come together, if you want to start something like this to better that penological environment, it's a great place to start. They are well attended in Tennessee, I can tell you, large numbers. Our strategies are laid out here on this slide, relatively simple, and it's all about the partnership, initiating that where you have stakeholders, the local government officials to identify problems and needs, and you absolutely get that set up where they set a chairperson, and now everybody kind of takes ownership in it, and these are the decision makers that you want to be. I actually have a few where they have private citizens set up, and I think that's great. One county we're working with in East Tennessee, that particular private citizen is in real estate development. So, anybody that's absolutely going to be able to lend any credibility to this or bring along some expertise, let's bring them. And at one point, again, building jails or expanding jails and spending tax dollars for that is not real popular. So we're going to have to be talking to those residents in that community. There's going to be a lot of media, going to be a lot of press about it. Look, through self-discovery, I've said it before, they will find out these are the needs they have to have. So you can convince the naysayers this is the direction we're going to go in. Setting goals is very important, and we structure that with a delivery system with that technical support. So we have steps along the way, and some of that training we'll be talking about on one of the slides, and I'll kind of tell you a little bit how that works. So we don't just give them busy work. And, of course, remember that I can't and Will can't and our staff can't be at every meeting, so we encourage them to stand up, take ownership of it, and be part of it. They don't need us at every turn. But if they ask for that technical support, we bring that in. Of course, that's part of the training. So education part of it is, and I enjoy that, is being a trainer for 24 some plus odd years, to actually get to go into environment. Two things I really enjoy doing. One is that new cadet. So training someone for the first time that's going in to be a correctional officer, I love that part. I love the discovery. I love to see the reactions on their face when we talk about different aspects of the correctional work. But I really enjoy talking to commissioners about it, because by law they're requested or required to go by and visit their jail, but do they really understand why we do things? So we actually get out and talk about case law with them. I mean, we have training that's appropriate so they understand that why do we do the things that we do. There's case law to support it. We have to.
Yeah, and some of the things that they learn are the legal ramifications of inaction. Many county commissioners or many of the people involved in some of these committees, that they don't truly understand that they are potentially liable for inaction, for conditions resulting because of the jail conditions which exist. And when you start to bring some of these things to light, then their tune starts to change a bit as to how can we help versus how can I stop this. Not that it's intentionally made to say, hey, you could get in trouble for something along these lines. However, what it does is lets them know what the facts are, and understanding that you could potentially be held liable tends to change things quite a bit. And what that does is it helps transition them into not only seeing what they need or what you're telling them they need, they truly start to know what they need, because it helps them formulate their own plan for immediate and future needs of the facility, to where they're not just living in a Bob likes to use this, like living in a barrel, and pretty soon that barrel starts to overflow. The way that when we educate this, they're like, okay, are we going to need 2 barrels, or are we going to need 3 barrels to ensure our future needs, not just dealing with what the problem that's in front of you. And in many cases, we've dealt with agencies that, they have this perspective of we know better. And we're not saying TCI knows better, but they keep everything so compartmentalized that by the time you're able to present any of this information, it's too late. So if you're able to educate on the front end and all of the stakeholders, everyone at the table, and let them understand, okay, you have these legal responsibilities, what are your needs now, what are potentially your needs for the future, then what it does is everything starts to come into perspective, and you have a working forum, and you have a working group that the education just doesn't stop right there in that room. At that point, they feel compelled to go out and educate their constituents. And let's face it, they're voters. They start to educate them on the needs and why we need a good correctional environment, why we may need more beds, why we may need more staff to ensure the safety of the community.
We work out a plan and basically steps that we use, and meanwhile we want to regain or obtain certification. So there's some milestones we see. Once we bring all those folks into the room, we get the committee going, we do the snapshot, we start talking about here's your problems, and we have the decision makers there if it's immediate to make a decision, and what's your long range forecast here. What are we going to do down the road? Are we going to kick the can down the road a little bit further, or are we going to start addressing this? And one of the things we point out at all these meetings is, think about it in terms of this. If a county legislative body sat down today and decided that, our jail's not working, we just need to build a new one, the physical plant's decaying, here are the reasons, let's do this. You're 3.5 years away from that. By the time you do the seismic, you do the topographical studies, you hire the architects, you vet that process. So it's a long process. So milestones for us, and there's just too many to mention. I mean, the fact that we have everyone in the room actually engaged in this discussion about resolving a problem in the jail. And I can tell you in Tennessee, some of these I'm talking about are problems that have existed for 10 and 12 years, and they were just never brought to light until we started our county correction partnership process. CCP is what did that. It brought everybody in the room, open meetings, sunshine law, of course, the state of Tennessee. Like Will mentioned earlier, public can come, they can listen, and actually, if they want to give opinions and offer their input, we listen to that. So it's actually worked. Now, in Tennessee, certification is important, and of course, for a couple of big reasons. One is that constitutionality. It's going to help protect you in those lawsuits. So we want to make sure that staff are doing what they can do to prevent that. And then secondly, one of the first questions in Tennessee on your insurance carrier is going to be, are you certified by the state of Tennessee? I mean, it's right at the top of the list. And if you're not, I've seen some cases, I know, where the insurance premium for those counties doubled, if not quadrupled.
One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we're not here talking about jail construction or building new jails. One of the first things that we always speak about is that you're not going to outbuild the problem. We like to talk a lot about reducing recidivism. How can we solve the corrections problem or the increasing of our jail population? Mass incarceration, warehousing human beings, it's been proven over and over that does not work. So one of the things that we accomplish through this is through our educational process is to let them know, yeah, your needs right now may be building a jail, but it's not going to solve your long-term issues. You're going to have to look at some additional, programs or some additional, whether it be educational, work-based, day reporting, different types of things to look at long-term solutions of your correctional environment and your correctional population, because your correctional population isn't just within the walls of that facility. And we try to really get that point across, that it's the people who are on parole, it's the people who have ankle monitoring, those types of situations are what really spill into your total correctional population. And to educate people on these things, and the slide that you're looking at now are some of the things that we perform for the CCP in different analysis or just different educational programs that we have, and Bob can go through and explain it because he teaches every one of them.
There are presently, to add what Will said, right now in the state of Tennessee, I think the last report by the Tennessee Department of Corrections puts the local jail lockup population just in local jails over 29,000. So that's a big number. That's not including Tennessee Department of Corrections facilities.
Yeah, which puts Tennessee up there in incarceration rate. I mean, we're well aware of that, and one of the governor's goals is to look at mass incarceration and look at ways of doing these things. I mean, we were lucky our director had the foresight to say, hey, we need to address this problem now, and that was 5 years ago. And he's placed it on his needs list, and these are things he wants to do, is take a look at long-term incarceration. That doesn't just include prisons, that includes the jails, because like Bob said, we have a very high incarceration rate in the state of Tennessee, and we're looking at different educational programs to assist and lower that, and the County Corrections Partnership is kind of leading the charge on that.
The different, and this is just a cross-section of what we actually do for the CCP members when it comes to training. If a need arises and they want training, a specialized training, they actually can ask for that, and we'll get that done. I know in one particular county they were having problems with the medical expenses. They were over budgeted some 125% midway through the year. So it became a nightmare for them, and they actually asked us as part of the CCP to come in and take a look at their current operations, and now they're going to go to contract medical. They made that decision. It was their information. We just put it all in one place, and that's basically what we do. Of course, I enjoy doing all these, but of course my favorite is right there on top, that snapshot analysis. Now, this isn't an in-depth study. We don't look at some of the things that you would go look for in a very comprehensive study. And I'm talking about projections. We try to stay away from that. We don't do projections, so we say this is what your population is going to look like 10, 15, 20 years down the road. We rely heavily on the folks that do the studies to do that. We actually go into their jail management system along with a member of their staff. In most cases, it's jail administrators. And we start pulling their data. And what's interesting about it is it is absolutely just their data. What I find interesting as I go around the different counties, they have this information there, but it's in like 7 different places. it all needs to be put together so somebody can make some kind of sense out of what it actually means. So it's a one-day snapshot, and it's going to deal with your population. It's going to have pictures. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, they say. And so a PowerPoint is put together. We talk about the different classifications, whether their objective classification is in play there at that facility. And in most of the cases we're dealing with, all of those right now, that they just can't meet classification. It's a serious problem. So that's enjoyable depending on how strong someone's jail management system is. This can be put together relatively pretty quick. In some cases, it kind of takes a while because you have to pull paper. The jail training, I think a lot of us are familiar with what does a jail do in your community video. That is actually the catalyst for that, and we take it from there on to educate them about administration concerns, inmate concerns, and liability. So it's something that we just did an acronym of called JAIL. It's been very, very popular. We actually get those case studies out, so safely all those, and let them know. Plus, they learn. It's a discovery process. Well, this is why we have to serve so many calories, and this is why we have to help them with their legal, and this is why we have to give so many stamps per week, and how to deal with those indigent inmates. So crisis management we actually get involved in, and this is talking about operation-wise in the jail, factors that feed that. Maybe they're not doing things the way they should be, and of course we absolutely try to encourage folks not to be in that situation. If they don't address it, it's only going to get worse, and nothing comes to good out of crisis management. If you start building a jail, I'm working with one now, and I won't mention the name, that actually is only a few years old and it's already overcrowded because it was done in crisis management. So we talk about how to stay away from that, and if you're heading that direction, what you need to do. Also, we work with conflict resolution, and then one of my most enjoyable one is transition training, and that's right out of the National Institute of Corrections playbook. We put it to a PowerPoint. We bring in the county commissioners and everybody that wants to be involved in that, and the CCP members, and we actually talk about the challenges they're going to be facing, and it opens their eyes. Again, there's that individual needs study you see there where in more than one case, we've gone and looked to see, well, maybe this is something the courts are doing that's driving our population. Maybe it's something that can be changed. One particular instance, to give you an example, in a jail, we had about 20% or 25% of the jail where inmates were just sitting in there because of their failure to pay child support, yet some of them have been there 6-7 months. So no one had reached out to the courts to say, can we do something about this? Can we accept part of that payment and let them back out on the street to get to work? So that day we were absolutely able just to empty about 20 inmates out of a facility, which was a big help. And then we partnership in education with other agencies like CTASC when it comes to staffing, feasibility, and things like that. So being able to step outside of that box, reach out to those other agencies, it's just been great for us.
One of the things that we have within our education parameters is that we try to custom develop for each facility's need. There's no, one shoe fits all or one size hat fits all. The more that we custom develop these for these agencies to go in and look at their data, show them pictures of their facility, and give them their information, they tend to own it more. They go, okay, this is the situation we're in. This is not just this broad brush that we're swiping in front of the entire field of corrections. It's something that's specific to them. And what we try to do is make that information appeal to all participants, meaning that a lot of times we become compartmentalized within corrections, and we start using acronyms or jargon and throw things out there that are above the layman's head. And what we try to do is bring that back down to earth and say, okay, this is what it means to you, and that we want that information to be accurate and transparent, meaning they know where the information comes from. There is no bias. There is no angle that we're looking at. We're presenting the data as it is and having them own it, and having people who assisted us in pulling this information be a participant in this as well. And we always present it as non-confrontational. The last thing you want to do is walk in and tell them what they have to do. I've never seen that work unless it was a federal judge saying, yes, you have to do this. And then at that point, it's non-negotiable. So what we do is the last person you want to answer a door from is the guy who pulls in your driveway and says, hey, I'm here to help. But we truly take that to heart. We are there to help, and we're there to try to present information as accurate as possible. So if anything out of our education programs, I think is the most important thing is just to be transparent, just to show the data as it is, try to create no spins, and really let people develop their own assumptions and their own idea of what exactly the problems are.
And along with that, Will, we also talk about, and one of the first things I tell the sheriffs and the jail administrators, the upper command staff is look, when we get ready to present this, we're going to have to do the good, the bad, the ugly approach. And so, it may not be appeasing to the eye to see that picture up there, but in most cases, and not using a spin, you want to stay away from that, but you can explain what wear and tear on a physical plant happens because you're overcrowded. You're actually putting more folks in there than what it was designed to do. And when those things happen, certain aspects of an operation start hurting. So you make sure that everybody on board understands that there's going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly up there. We need to be transparent. We need to make sure they understand it. And just don't be confrontational. Stay away from that. Just report the facts.
Well, some of the venues, we do everything from commission meetings. We've been asked to attend town hall meetings, county commission, city council meetings, public groups, Rotary Chamber, Lions Club. Many times these venues, they want us there to help educate. And that's purely what it is, because many times if you get in some of these committees, they have an idea and they understand. They just sometimes need us to come in and say, look, from a different perspective, they are correct that they need to assess their jail operations, or they need to potentially look at expanding that facility. And this isn't all of them. I assure you, we've been in front of multiple venues, and it's just kind of at whatever the county needs, we're more than willing to go out there and assist these agencies.
Town hall meetings are particularly, if I can have that slide back, I just want to make a point. We actually have participated in several of those, and what we'll hear is boots on the ground when we get to county where they're facing these challenges and they may have to spend taxpayer dollars to improve it. Well, the citizens never put up for it. It's just really interesting. That's not what those citizens say when they come to town hall meeting. They just want to be informed. Why is this occurring? Why is it happening? And we end up having conversations about, well, what is your community doing to prevent this? What are the outreach programs at your churches and your schools, your civic organizations? So they've all been wonderful, absolutely wonderful. We were not run out of town with pitchforks and torches.
Well, we've been escorted to the county line.
Well, maybe.
So what are some of the things we expect to accomplish? I think we've covered most of these, but just to kind of wrap it all up, with different programs, we really try to address controlling the inmate population and promoting these programs in which they can do that, which is responsible to the citizen, meaning their safety. We don't want to say, okay, start all these programs, release all these people without an educated, just a deliberate approach in the way that you need to address these. We want to be smart about it, but we don't want to just go out on a limb and say, okay, well, we're just going to start putting ankle monitors. We can assist these different entities with, okay, what are the criteria for the people that you're allowing to do day reporting versus the running into the selective law enforcement, which many overcrowding facilities deal with, that many times judges get put in bad spots that there's just no room in the jail, so they continually have to slap persons on the hand. But through inmate programs, what that allows us to do is if a judge sees a need that, okay, we have to incarcerate this person, at that same time people are transitioning out.
The funding for the large projects is we basically are not a funding agency, and we're certainly not financial advisors, but what we do is we have an outreach where they can talk to other counties, they can talk to those organizations that provide that funding. We can talk about revenues they receive off state inmates or federal inmates. We can talk about reducing operation costs. All those things have to be discussed, and at the end of the day, somebody's going to have to write a check. We also look at that security equipment like it's mentioned up there. We're going into facilities where we're seeing outdated cameras, recording capabilities are not there. You're talking about a facility that was built 35 years ago, and they just don't have DVR. So we have to talk with the county commission, educate them, and let the county corrections partnership. It's their ultimate goal as the steering committee, and I hate that word, but basically that's what they do. They'll hear all this data and information, they'll put it together, and they'll go in front of their full legislative body, and they'll make recommendations. And we try to attend those meetings. If there's any questions they want to ask, we're going to be part of that and help offer a resolve for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and as you see on there, also, we as far as construction is concerned, we attempt to paint a picture for that, what is actually going on, and if they need to move in that direction, we try to provide as much assistance as we can in that, and including kind of a project, what do you call it, Bob? It's someone who oversees a project as the construction is going.
Right. Project manager.
A project manager, just to look at the, as the construction is taking place. We have one of our detention facility specialists who goes out and ensures that, okay, they're sticking with the plans, they're addressing these needs, that the shortcuts aren't being taken, which in so many cases, we learned this out of necessity as well, is that while the plans look fine and great and wonderful and all, when it comes down to it, by the time the facility opens the door, they miss quite a few things. And so we've recently been offering more of a project consultant, a person as a project consultant, to kind of look after those things, to ensure that the taxpayers are getting what they paid for. And as well as staffing, we bring in CTAS who does staff analysis, but through our standards, we can many times do an operational assessment, and what we plan to accomplish is, okay, how can we minimize the cost, but how can they best effectively staff their facility?
I think we've actually addressed this slide. I talked about certification and the historical perspective of TCI and what it means, and this is just a great step, the CCP process. Our board is really interested in counties. If they're willing to help themselves, then they're most likely willing to get a resolve to their issues. So we want to continue down that path of certification. CCP is a great aspect of that. The CCP itself now has some data and some history that we can go back and look at. So and how it's involved. And you see about 30, sometimes 32 counties involved or facilities, and sometimes it's multiple facilities in Tennessee where they operate a workhouse and a jail. So we've actually come up on that situation where neither one of those would actually certify. 11 counties have been removed from the POA since 2013. We've reviewed multiple plans. The numbers are now somewhere around 20 plan reviews we've done. 8 new jails have been completed. 8 expansions have occurred. We have 1 in progress right now, or 2 that are in progress that we'll be able to add to that list, so that'll make it 10. And we actually have had 3 counties removed from POA that did not have to spend a dime, and that's what we're looking for. We'll mention that a little bit earlier. What we want to go in and look, is building just always the answer to this? And it's not. You can't build your way out of that. Maybe operational-wise, we can change some things. So we'll offer our opinions. We'll reach out to others. And one of the things the CCP has actually done for us, now that it's built a community base, because several counties are going through this, they're actually reaching out to each other. In one particular county, they had a lot of maintenance issues with lighting, and I was able to ask another county if they would lend their maintenance people to that, and they did, to no cost to that county. Came in, gave them advice, spent 3 days with them, showed them how to fabricate all these things and fix lights that inmates were tearing up, and a couple times this has actually happened, so I'm real proud of that. They're actually working with each other across the state.
And many times it was just about us providing that avenue, or giving that, allowing that conduit. We just happen to be the conduit that got one agency to another, and that's where it's truly successful. Is that it's not just all about TCI's resources. It's about these counties that want to help others, or they've been through this process, and they can assist the different facilities and needs that they have, whether it's looking at that operation, looking at their policy, looking at maintenance issues. And surprisingly enough, that's the amount of cost that's placed on maintenance problems that people are spending, and I don't think they realize that they could actually reduce those costs. In that one instance that Bob was speaking of, what it meant to them long term is almost unquantifiable how much money it's going to save them in the future.
We actually had one county that had not been certified in 30 years. We were able to get the CCP process started. We started educating commissioners. We started educating the staff. And we were able to turn a bend in the road. Last year they received their certification for the first time. And look, what I want all of you, our listeners and everybody in the room to remember today, that, here in Tennessee, we're talking about a county legislative body where taxpayer dollars go into one general fund, and they're proportioned out then to all those entities, like the school board, if they own a hospital, the jail, whatever they have to have, roads. So everybody is in that room up there fighting for more money. And if the money's not there, then taxation has to take place and funding has to come about. So to have all the facts in play and stand up and say, this is why we need this, here's the facts, and that's what we deal in is facts, and this is what's going on at our facility, we're able to get that done. So one of the great things about having other regulatory agencies that are available to us is that we can actually reach out to those. Here at Tennessee Correction 2, we are under Commerce and Insurance, and the fire marshal, state fire marshals are a part of that. So we have a moral and ethical duty. If we see life safety issues, we bring them in. Now, they do have the authority to close jails. It's not our goal to do that. Our goal is to find jails during that situation, crisis management, what it may be, and bring them out of that and get that certification, or if they need to replace that physical plant. So having people come in from the outside and take a candid look sometimes is just paramount. You take a local jail staff up to that county commission meeting, and maybe the sheriff and the county commissioners, they just may all have that thing out. This is what they want said, and this is how they want it said. We're very open. And we've talked many times about, we do it in plain spoken English. We don't talk about people's heads. We just keep it down where everybody can understand what's being said and what's going on. And there's some cost saving here. I mean, a lot of cost saving. In some facilities I've worked with, they elected not to do studies. They paid outside vendors $126,000, $140,000 when we actually have stakeholders that can do that absolutely cost-free. So, to make this happen in your locale, be it state of Georgia, Florida, Texas, wherever it may be, some of the first things you need to do is just look at your resources within your own agency. You all have very talented people, very educated folks that have dealt with this issue. Look inside and see what you can get done. And then look at regulatory compliance bodies who are willing to assist you. We've been very fortunate in Tennessee to get everybody on board with this. They all, if I can do a little country pun, they just think it's better than pocket on a shirt. I mean, it absolutely is working. And then identify those facilities in your state that would be willing to participate or implement it. And a great startup would be to find that one agency, say, let us beta test it here. Let's see if we can get this done. What's a phenomenon here for us has been at the startup, we weren't into the process 6 months. Agencies from counties that were not in trouble, yet they had forecasted maybe issues further down the road, Will can testify to this, actually reached out to us and asked us to start a CCP for them. And of course, at that point in time, our priorities were with those facilities we started up they were just in dire straits. They were in trouble. So I actually did accept one. They were very convincing, and the mayor, to the point of a phone call every day, we actually did that, and that facility maintained its certification and actually did a big expansion, and I'm talking about a 200-plus bed expansion. So they're set way in the future. So you just identify those that need help and places you can implement this program, and it can work in your locale. And then major is set goals. Part of the training that we didn't list up there is I actually developed a CAP program, and that's committee action planning. And you would really be surprised, and I was, across the state, folks that really had never discussed that or actually given it a lot of thought. They assume that just because you're a committee, and that's those double I's and T's, that two people came together and you got something done. Well, that's just not how it works. So I actually take them through that training, and that's one of the first things we kind of do up front, maybe somewhere along right after the snapshot, that, look, you need to develop a mission, you need to have a vision, and then how you're going to implement this and how we're going to make it work and set up those stepping stones to success. So we're finding out that counties that have gone through my CAP program are very, very successful, because now they actually say, you know what, I get it.
And you have to open it up. Well, your goals need to be open-ended, I should say. Your goals absolutely have to be open-ended. You have to understand that no process is the same. Because if you look at implementing something like this in your area, from facility to facility, it will differ. From year to year, it will differ within the same facility. So keep your goals open-ended, but you need to have some primary keystones or milestones you'd like to reach and certain things that you want to attach to. But with that being said, we've been, I guess, Bob and I are not known to be short-winded. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on and take some questions if we have the time.
Will and Bob, thank you very much. That was an amazing presentation and amazing insight in this area. So, yeah, you're right. Let's move on to some questions. And just a message for all the attendees. We are running a little long, so we're going to ask some questions. And if for some reason you can't stay on, we are recording this. So you will get a message about where that is, where that video is, and you'll be able to hear all those answers if you can't stick around. So don't worry about that. So, yeah, so let's go on. Oh, and also, if you still have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box down below, and we will try to get to them. So your first question is, do you have the authority to impose monetary penalties for noncompliance? If so, is there a formula available on a website or in writing?
No, that once again, our penalties are basically stop at certification. But that's almost the beauty of the program, is that seeing as we're not regulatory and we can't shut the doors on a jail, what we do is we do bring things to light. And what it does allow us is to not have that, I guess, when you are regulatory, many times facilities tend to be closed off to, okay, how are you going to look at this? Because once again, Bob described how we expose the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when the same agency that comes and inspects you and you're exposing those things, that's why we've dedicated specifically Bob to overseeing this program. He's not responsible for inspections anymore. It's one of those been there, done that guys. So what he does is he's more in the assistance realm. But, you know, to answer that question, no, we don't have any regulatory authority. But the only penalty we can do is really bring in the fire marshals in needs where serious life safety issues, and we have done that in the past. And at that point, they can basically say, okay, you've got 48 hours to pack up your jail and get out of here. And that's happened actually recently.
There will be a financial impact. It's not a penalty starting in 2017. You know, our training, we don't have a building here in Nashville to do that in. We do it remotely, so we go to those agencies. But if you're not a certified agency, starting in 2017, we will not host training there. We have a few agencies, the large agencies in the state of Tennessee, like Knox and Shelby, that have training waivers where they operate their own training academy, and they'll actually lose those, and they won't be able to regain them. So there will be some impact by having to bring other folks in for training and sending their people out for training. Good question.
Great, thank you. So the next question is, while engaged in design and manpower issues, is the partnership assisting with identifying the needs to fully comply with the PREA Act of 2003?
Well, yeah, what we do is, well, I need to clarify something first. That once again, that's a federal mandate, an unfunded federal mandate. However, at TCI, we're not attached to that. That's independent. That's judged through the feds are the ones who have auditors, and they certify auditors, and the jails have to pay for audits to come in. However, in the construction process, we are very cognizant of that. We have sight and sound considerations within our own standard, as well as sexual assault information within our own state jail standards, which are really in line with the ACA core standards. And what we try to do is we try to make all of those accommodations which would best help. But as far as being PREA specific as to what an auditor would want happen, then we're talking about different barriers such as screens and those types of things. But hard physical plant construction-wise, yes, we do address that with our sight and sound considerations, as well as our sexual assault and our sexual assault information within our standards. As far as the non-consensual law, we had laws in the state of Tennessee that prohibited those types of things prior to even PREA. So we've piggybacked on that, and all of those considerations are taken in regards to how we assist jails in the construction process. Great question.
So next question here: do counties in Tennessee often work collaboratively, whereas a county jail experiencing overcrowding may pay to board out inmates to neighboring county with free beds?
They absolutely do, but what we're finding out across the state, and I know it's in other regions of the country, they're all in the same boat, so to speak. They just don't have the available beds. So, but it happens. They reach out and try to accommodate each other, and in some cases they just will hold them for them. They obviously give up any prisoner for the board bill is paid, like a Tennessee Department of Correction inmate. In some cases they'll hold them, they won't charge them. In some cases they have to charge them. I mean, it costs to operate. So it does happen, and they do work together well.
Yeah, but the notion of free beds, while it may be great assistance from one county to another, the notion of free beds, someone's tax dollars somewhere are paying for it. And many times, even if they are able to collaborate with another county, it's more or less a tit for tat or quid pro quo at some point during the process, because it's more or less a trade, and it is helpful to a lot of counties, and they are able to do that. And honestly, that if without those collaborative agreements and those partnerships that they've established amongst each other, then many of them would be in dire straits. I mean, it speaks volumes about the type of jail system and the way our sheriffs work together, and chiefs of police in the state of Tennessee is they really try to assist each other. Great question.
And you might have already answered this one, but what does this cost?
I love that question. When I first started, I would tell those commissioners, listen to what I call the initiative. And that is a startup where I actually have a PowerPoint that I take and say, hey, this is what we do. Let me show them this PowerPoint. Let me show you some pictures of some jails that are in bad shape. This is why the need exists. That gets asked, and I will tell them up front, I'll say, there's no cost to this. But literally, someone, almost every meeting at the end, will raise their hand, one of those commissioners, and go, what's this cost? They can't believe it. So I've actually made that PowerPoint slide number 2. The first one has our contact information, who we are, and slide number 2, I have to, and actually the other day I did a presentation, and I still got asked when it was done, what's this cost? And of course, as soon as the legislative body finds out it's free, it's not really hard to convince them it's a direction to go. And remember, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have to get that committee put together. So you're going to have those legislative members in a room. You're going to have to go into that room, not be confrontational, talk about what you can do for them, and look, this is free, and this is what can happen, and this is how we can save you money. And at the end of the day, you're going to better your correctional environment.
Yeah, and it free. And free you need to watch out for. The way it's free for us is this: we just put the tax dollars that were already in place to do the things that we had to do as a state agency. We just moved them. In fact, our budget has gone down as far as an agency over the last couple of years. But what we've done is it's just putting those tax dollars that the taxpayers are already putting out there. We're putting those to work for them, because that's we're a state agency, and we truly believe in serving the public and serving those agencies and serving the counties, which we're just not sitting in an office making decisions. We're out there working for them. So free is a relative term, I suppose. We are putting the tax dollars that we're allocated to work for them.
Thank you. I think that's all we have time for today. So I'd like to thank both Will and Bob for providing their perspectives and sharing their experience with us today. I'd also like to thank all of you for attending. Like I've mentioned before, we've recorded this webinar, and we will send out something in the coming days to each of you to share it. In addition, you'll be receiving a survey following the event. Please take a few moments to fill it out. It lets us know other topics that you'd like us to try to present at these webinars, and we would really appreciate your feedback. I guess that's it for our webinar. Thank you again, Will and Bob, for everything today, and we look forward to seeing you at one of our future webinars. Have a great week.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.